It's finally happening as multiple Minnesota Wild players are finally falling into their places, and Wild fans are pumped at what has been going on over the last few preseason games. We're going to be breaking it down as well as going over the most recent and one player that really stood out from others, as well as a quote from Craig Leipold going over Kirill Kaprizov and the contract situation, which he was asked, which caused quite a stir among Wild reporters and fans. We're going to break it all down here in this video, especially going over that Kirill Kaprizov stuff, because we need your guys' opinion on this here in the comments below. Be sure to stick around for the end of the video till we get to that. Before we do jump into this video, though, ladies and gentlemen, do me one favor if you haven't already, and hit the sub button. We're bringing you all of your Minnesota Wild news coming over this preseason, heading into the regular season, and a lot of moving pieces are still underway. You won't want to miss it. We're going to have it all right here for you guys. But we need to get straight into this, because going over today, yesterday's game against the Dallas Stars, there were some very good looks ahead of that game, during the game, and even after the game, which ultimately did result in a loss, but a lot of positive stuff to take away, and a lot of things that we may continue to see into the regular season. Now, I first wanted to go ahead and pull up the what Michael Russo put out here, just a similar kind of box score breakdown recap, whatever you want to call it, of this game. And although they did drop this game 5-2 to the Dallas Stars, we saw some very positive stuff. First of all, Marco Rossi, 2 goals in 10 seconds with Matt Boldy. That line, which we're going to show in a minute here as well, we get the lines, going to kind of go over that as well, is something that we need to see in the regular season. A few changes could be made, and we're going to talk about that. But one big thing, Jesper Wallstedt stepped 12 of 12 on his 2 periods of play, with ultimately Samuel Levi coming in, gave up 4 goals on 14 shots, but ultimately we know he's not ready for an NHL tenure just yet. But very positive stuff coming from Jesper Wallstedt here, who was someone that we kind of highlighted here as a player that really did need to take a step up. He said his confidence got back, he's not focusing anything on last season, and this is a good showing, even though against the Dallas Stars lineup that was not completely filled with their NHL talent. 2 periods against the Dallas Stars, regardless of who they have playing. We know their staff is good, and we know that they're a good team. Very positive signs to start out early behind Filip Gustavsson this season. But going into this game, there was a very positive outlook here, and a few things that many fans have been waiting for, me included. And first of all, Rossi, Boldy, Caprizov, that first line, absolutely fantastic. I think that's something that we need to see here. Have Joel Eriksson Ek on the second line, wherever you want to do there. I think that Rossi with Boldy and Caprizov has been infinitely better on the offense, which is something that we know this Wild team is really going to need to amp up this season a little bit, as long as everybody stays healthy. And with that lineup, those 3 on this same line, they've shown quite a mix of talent that has worked out phenomenally. And I would really be willing to argue this is one of the best lines in the NHL. But Liam Ohgren as well, but Danila Yurov and Vladimir Tarasenko, a very interesting line, which I love. Having Danila Yurov centering with Liam Ohgren on the left side, who is taking a big role over Matt Zuccarello, who is injured, still going to be out until at least a little bit into the regular season, giving Ohgren a huge opportunity, and as someone who has really looked a lot different this season than last, and with more muscle, more strength, just kind of a different mindset behind his game, things are looking very good with that, and having those two among, Vladimir Tarasenko, someone who has been a Stanley Cup winner, multiple time, just talented player. He's someone that is going to bring a lot of energy to this team, and has been someone that's kind of spoken out about having kind of a revamped mindset heading into this year, and being there on that line with Danila Yurov and Liam Ohgren, the skill that he brings, that's not gone. That is still there, and he will bring a lot of talent to that line, and having the rest of this lineup down the offense still be kind of mixed up, and having a few other players on the offense, regulars, sit out, very good stuff for the remainder of this team. But one other thing as well, we're now in the Zeev Buium Brock Faber era, and this is something that, once again, we're waiting to see. And even though Jared Spurgeon, Jonas Brodin's still here, these are 2 players that are going to be taking the reins of this defense very, very soon. And I don't want to push out Brodin, don't want to push out Spurgeon, but their time is coming. They're getting a bit older, and the time's not going any slower. So having these guys play together, especially the way that we did see Buium and Faber play, last year, mainly Faber, who did not play the greatest last season, although with a lot of injuries on the defense, there wasn't much he could have done. Zeev Buium did make his appearance here in the postseason last year against Vegas, now getting for his first regular season tenure coming up soon. Did have the great game yesterday, but this is still, once again, a very positive outlook on how this defensive kind of scheme is going to come out to be in a couple of years' time. And even as early as this year, I'd be willing to argue that this will be a top line in the Wild system. But some very good stuff in this preseason game. A lot to take away and a lot to go positive with, especially where the Wild were up here in the third period, and ultimately Samuel Levi came in. Not the greatest game from him, but we saw some very good stuff from this team here throughout the game in the first two periods. But a big thing that came out yesterday, which really overshadowed this game, was Craig Leipold. He was asked multiple questions about just about a lot of everything. Initially started saying, hey, I am not going to be talking about anything going on here with this team. I'm not going to be talking about anything about Kirill Kaprizov. I just want to talk about where we currently are. And having him come into this, ask questions, they did not go off on the right foot as we kind of jump into right away. He said, was asked really the question about Kirill Kaprizov. He said, I wasn't going to talk about Kirill. Leipold said when immediately asked about Kaprizov, I really am serious. There is nothing to gain, everything to lose. And I'll be honest, Craig Leipold, he stood his stance, and I like that. He's not going to say anything, initially asked that, but immediately asked a question, standing on his business there, very positive. But coming out and saying, everything to lose, nothing to gain. That is a very good quote, and a very, a big stance on where we currently stand with Kirill Kaprizov, because as we know, we don't know anything yet. We really know nothing about where he's planning on, putting his money, where he's planning on kind of asking for that, where his term is planning on being. We know nothing. So the fact that the Wild are currently still in that position, the same as us, or probably a little bit more from what we know, it's going to be a very important thing to keep things under wraps, and we've already seen one thing get out, and Craig Leipold does not want that to happen again, and does not want to make Kirill Kaprizov unhappy with this team, with stuff like that getting out. Now, going into it as well, this comes from The Athletic, and I'll post those articles in the description below. What we don't know is Theo Van is just trying to squeeze more money from what the Wild thinks, because he thinks Leipold will be desperate enough to up the ante even more. If Kaprizov just doesn't want to be the first one to sign in several big names entering the final year of his contract, or, to be blunt, Kaprizov simply does not want to stay in Minnesota. And this is what Michael Russo and Joe Smith both came out with here going in through this game, and having, the option there of, first of all, what I think is most likely, he's waiting for a Connor McDavid to sign, waiting for the money to go. But also, Theo Van is putting out here, which is Kaprizov's agent, trying to squeeze out a bit more money and trying to get him as the highest paid player, which Craig Leipold said he was going to do. And that little third part there, I really think is unlikely. But you had to put in an article, and, you can't disregard that, even though, as much as I would like to, it's very hard to not do so here. So, looking at how we currently are, and kind of in this from Craig Leipold's put himself in a bit of a predicament here with the Kaprizov situation. And speaking of Kaprizov, I wanted to pull up the jerseys. We saw some very interesting things coming out here, and we're going to jump into that in a moment. But speaking of Kirill Kaprizov, continuing on with that contract stuff, there's a lot of interesting things. And the fact that Craig Leipold still kind of put himself in that predicament, and the way that he kind of quoted himself there when asked about it, I think that he's knowing that he kind of put himself in a bit of a predicament for the Wild, but don't want to go too further into that while they're still trying to lower that contract. But one more quote here that we do have to bring out, this one once again from Craig Leipold. He says, I think that that is normally how these things would work. The first domino goes down, it's likely moves the other ones. But honestly, we're not involved in any of that. We've got only one thing we need to worry about. So Craig Leipold had his touch really on the idea of what would happen if, Connor McDavid signed and the rest fall. We normally see that now, especially with a lot of these big names. That's really been a highlight of what's been going on. So let me know what you think about those contract situations here. But I did have one more thing before we finish the video off. You probably saw it, Kirill Kaprizov in the new uniforms, the new 25th anniversary Wild jerseys. These are spectacular. Throwing it back to, I believe, is the 05-06 season. These will be here on my body soon enough. I'm going to be getting several of these, but wearing 4 times this season, these jerseys need to become a permanent regular jersey that we have, whether it's an alternate, whether it's something along the lines of that. We need to see these here in the future, and they just absolutely look phenomenal. I want to know your guys' opinion on this, with also how this kind of lineup has been setting over the past couple of games, as well as what Craig Leipold has said about Kirill Kaprizov here in the comments below. But that is all I have in this video. Once again, as I mentioned, a lot of stuff coming out, and we're going to have a lot more coming over the next few days. And with a lot of stuff ending in the preseason, the regular season is upon us, and we have a lot to break down with this Wild roster being cut down more and more. So, like I said, that's all I got here in this video. If you enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. I'm signing out, though. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.